Joined Braintrust, I want to say a month ago, and within 2 weeks, or within the first week, got 2 interviews with Coursera, and within 2 weeks, got hired by them. Please tell us a bit about your background, and then tell us about your process of winning the job with Coursera. And I have a few talent questions that I'm going to ask you.
Okay, sounds great. As you stated, I've been in the IT industry for quite a while now, and I've worked through my MBA and up to a doctorate. So, I was hoping a lot of people when I worked for my education, a lot of people were saying I was educating myself out of a job, and I told them I might be educating myself out of the job I'm in now, but not the job I'm going to be in. So that we're all striving for that next best
Yeah, it's
step.
raining.
What is your 5-year goal and your 10-year goal? Sorry, I think that's Daniel talking. So I was, looking at that and looking at other interviews I've either conducted myself, which came in handy for learning how to interview myself because I'm not a salesman. I don't like selling myself. But talking to others and going through the interview processes, which you've done a little bit on your profile reviews and interview prep that I highly encourage everyone to attend, is basically it's the art of storytelling. We all have to be salesmen. You all have to sell yourselves. And the biggest thing I had was an interview I had with Amazon a while back, and Amazon uses a STAR method. So if you don't know about it, look it up and see what it is. But basically you set up a situation. So tell them the story that you're going to tell them, identify the tasks that needed to occur, the actions that took place, and then the result of those actions. So every single interview I went through with them was probably about 6 interviews. Every single one was using the STAR method. Every single one wanted a story told to them, wanted to describe how it happened. So I use that same methodology with Coursera, and understanding cultures around the world. Understanding Coursera is a global company, working with understanding, like I said, cultures. So in Japan, for example, it's business first, then the niceties, whereas Latin America, it's more niceties and then business. Say, how was your weekend? How are you doing? How's the dogs? How's the kids? And then you get down to business. So understanding some of those cultural differences, I think really helped set the tone at the beginning of the interview. So that way I was connecting with the interviewer, we were chatting a tiny bit, and then we got into the questions they needed to ask. And then I set up the situation, told the story, identified the results. And if you can get results that are mathematical parameters or statistics, that's really what they want to hear. They want to hear that 90% success rate. They want to hear we had a growth of a certain percentage, which it's really hard to get that information. When you go into a project or a program or you're developing something, you may know that you're 10% in the development cycle, or you haven't even started it yet. And when you leave the project as a developer, you're 100% done. But in a program or a project, they're constantly evolving, they're constantly growing. Programs are a collection of lots of projects, and I've had over 400 projects underneath one of my programs. So how do you communicate that information without divulging industry, trademark secrets, and confidentiality and stuff like that? So you've really got to keep it generic. And what I advise doing is write up a little summary ahead of time and have some stories ready to go. So when they ask you, give me a situation when you had, from one of the examples of one of the questions I had was a difficult vice president or someone that needs to contribute to the program, but they're not coming through. They're not giving you the information they need. They're not participating in your calls. What do you do? So I had some of those stories, just typed up with a little bullet point off to the side, and I was able to talk through them and walk through that process with them. I really connected with one of the vice presidents I know I interviewed with, because she told me right at the end of the interview, she thought everything went great and she would hire me on the spot if I was coming into her group. But she was just one of the 5 interviews I had to go through. So that was great feedback I had right there at that time. But the rest of them, like there was 2 of the 5 that I really didn't get a feel for. I really couldn't tell how it went. And that was even with the very last one, which was the hiring manager. I really couldn't get a feel for them. And it was just the type of individuals I think they were. So I was kind of up in arms, or up in the air at the last minute, going, I'm not sure how that went. I'm not sure which way it's going to go. But luckily, it all turned out. So it all did work good. I answered all their questions. I asked for additional feedback. I had a couple questions prepared at the end when they always say, hey, do you have any questions for us? So I had to think about a few situational questions about where they're at in their company, where they were a year ago, where they want to be 5 years from now. So I was trying to use that roadmap approach and think 5 or 10 years down the road and try to have some of those questions prepared ahead of time. Okay, I see a few things popping up in chat.
I love it, Calvin. Thank you so much. I mean, that was a lot. Good thing I'm using Otter AI to transcript this meeting so then we can actually put together a blog post of what you said. But
Okay.
lots of gold in there. I'm going to look up the STAR method. I actually entered like an article on it in chat, so those who are interested can read up on it. But I love when you said you write down little anecdotes, little stories ready, right? So maybe put it in a Google Doc, so then it's like putting together your toolbox, and whenever people are interviewing you, you know which tool or which story to pull out and talk about. So that's really great. Question. So Paulina was asking, you alluded to this slightly, but how many rounds of interviews? What were the titles? And what was the conversation like? Was it more serious? Was it conversational? Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, and as I mentioned a little bit, it started conversational, just to see how you doing, how was your week, how are things going for you, and then we got into the more serious questions. And let them get through their script because they have an interview script. They have to be able to document the answers and report it back. Because they're just one of the few people at the company that's been asked to perform this interview and to give their evaluation. So I tried not to be too long-winded and tried to keep it short to the point, which is hard to do sometimes. The interviews were limited to 30 minutes. 2 of them ran 2 minutes over. So trying to give a story and try to be concise with it's not always the easiest thing to do. But they were more conversational. And I got through them. Trying to think of the other one you're asking. So it was conversational. We got to the point, and I gave the story.
Of interviews, and what were the titles of the people who interviewed you?
Right. So yeah, as I stated, there was 5 interviews that I went through with Coursera specifically. With Amazon, it was 6 interviews. With another company, it was about 6 interviews, and I got through all the interview processes until up to the very end. Type of thing. So it's, why things fell down or why things weren't accepted was, total other matters. But with Coursera, it was only 5 of them. It was 2 directors, one person that was equal to my position that I was going into. And then another person, I think was not a senior VP. So there was, 2 directors, a VP, and a couple of people at my level, or at least what seemed to be my level. They gave the titles when they set up the interviews, but they really didn't say what group they work in or what their association was, how I might be relating to them if I were to accept the position, that type of thing. So it was kind of vague in that respect.
Okay, last question, then we'll move on. Any whiteboard or case study questions from Fo Nguyen?
For developers, I can understand that, but I'm a technical program manager, so I'm actually leading the programs. So as that state, I did not use whiteboard. Case study questions actually relates back to the STAR method. Set up the situation, identify the tasks, what actions were taken, and then what were the results of those. So how did the situation get resolved, or how was it, what was the outcome of it to show that there was growth within the company, that it was a successful program. So when you're talking, if you're thinking an individual project, then that individual project, there has to be a set start, an action, and then the completion. So following that same project methodology is what I was trying to lay out for them on a program scale. So just up a little bit higher from the project.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Calvin. Everyone, let's give him a round of applause. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your experience, and we'll send this slide later on.
Sounds great.